need to look at the future of city and town planning and dissemination of more information so that there will be exchanges both at the national and at the local level. At the public level, financial resources often come into play, and investment mostly by the private sector so that we can deploy more innovation system into the development with regard to the low carbon society, and at the same time for education resources as well. It's quite similar to what the local level will have to do. At the international level, as we all know, we need a lot of political will to do this so that we can mobilize the policies in a more effective way and get commitment not only from the government sector but also from the private sector and the local sector. We probably need some kind of a roadmap in order to focus our commitment to integrate the work of climate change mitigation and adaptation. In Thailand, we have a central committee on climate change headed by the Prime Minister, for example. We also need some kind of consortium work, especially on the part of research and development. Hopefully, at the end of this year in December, our office is hosting the ASEAN retreat on science and technology, and we will talk about the new charter of ASEAN community and how climate change would have a role in the next generation of science technology development of ASEAN. That's one example that we can put our effort on. We also need to boost up the public understanding on climate change that we all know, and so that we can increase the level of collaboration. Okay. Lastly, I would just like to touch very briefly on the role of science and technology policy framework for the low carbon society. And this is just for Thailand. I don't know whether it can be useful or adjustable in the future. For example, at the National Development Plan, we, apart from trying to get the ASEAN community to drive this issue, but we also, our National Economic and Social Development Plan also would touch on this as well. It would certainly affect the transportation, the logistics of Thailand. Currently, the government is at the stage of planning the electric train system, extended system for Bangkok metropolitan, and at the same time also the rail system that would join the north, from the north to the south. And that not only provide transportation system and logistics system that would reduce the number of pollution caused by the trucking of goods throughout Thailand that has been happening in Thailand for a long time, but it also would provide linkage between us, Thailand, and our neighboring countries, from China, Laos, down to Malaysia. So this is quite important, and it involves a large number of investment. In accordance with the National Development Plan, the Ministry of Science and Technology itself is conducting and providing many R&D projects and activities to mitigate and adapt to climate change, which can be grouped into 3 items, as you see. The preparation for the adaptation, basically, the mathematical model, and the development of life cycle assessment. I just want to raise one example in adaptation, and that is crop improvement, to be more resilient to stresses that have tendency to increase due to climate change, such as drought or flooding. Moreover, to try to improve the crops to become more resistant to insects and diseases that come naturally with climate change also. Technically speaking, this is done by using DNA marker assisted breeding in combination with conventional breeding technology. The research and development in crop improvements needs greenhouse environment, so does the cultivation of some crop plants to give them suitable environment for optimal growth, such as research on greenhouse materials, greenhouse design for tropical plants, and environmental control system for greenhouses, for example. This work also involves the development of models that use, for example, remote sensing data such as sea surface temperature and geographical information. The results are quite important in developing our adaptation strategies. For example, it can be used to identify the so-called hotspots, areas that are vulnerable due to high risks from climate change impact, or having low coping capacity, or both. This is going to be more and more important. And this is just some of the data that the program at START program at Durongkaveroj University has highlighted. Finally, we also the database can also be used for many applications, such as the calculation of the carbon footprint of a product or of an organization. Thai International Airline is one of the good examples that they are dealing with the carbon issue at the moment. The life cycle also, the database also provides a basis for further development in life cycle inventory, or LCI, as well as emission inventory that I have spoken earlier. The ultimate goal of this kind of work is to develop cross-cutting body of knowledge and information that are essential for national setting maybe targets, for example, the greenhouse gas emission. Okay. So I think this is just a quick example of the way we think, as I mentioned earlier, from the perspective of Ministry of Science and Technology. So it may not cover wisely on the issue of climate change as a whole, just a portion from our angle. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pichet, for your very interesting presentation. Utilize this future-looking planning using backcasting and a lot of stakeholder involvement, private sector, academia, and others in this deliberation, and also applying a lot of different policy tools like market mechanism education, town planning, and so on and so forth. So a lot of important features of adaptive governance has been incorporated already in this policy planning. So any questions? And okay, please.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, do you base your analyses on, what statistics do you base it on, in-country or UN statistics, or both?
In our scenario planning exercise, we use both, although I must say it may not be as complete as we wish to, because the main thing that we try to do a lot is the participation, rather than to throw them with a lot of facts and figures, because sometimes they tend to get lost with trying to cling to certain facts and figures. But for the basic ones, such as the 2-degree centigrade rise of global temperature and 450 parts per million of carbon dioxide, those sort of numbers